Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name's Aldino, and welcome to our Palladium Alerts training session. So today we're going to focus more on the technical side of Palladium Alerts, and I'll take you through all the features, all the capabilities, and how we go about creating different types of alerts. As we've mentioned, we've got our new multi-tenanted version out, which means we can have one installation of Palladium Alerts, and it is a browser-based application with multiple logins. And each login will have their own unique set of database tables, all in one database, which makes upgrades, adding of new features to the multi-tenanted version a lot easier. And all we then do is we need to connect to various SQL data sources, which will be kept within a specific registration key. So if we've got 50 different registration keys, when each prospect logs on, they will still only see access to their own data connections and their own alerts that they've created. So I'm going to log on using my username. And we're going to quickly go through the landing page of Palladium Alerts. So at the moment, we've got full functionality. However, we will be releasing a new version of Palladium Alerts within the next few weeks. It will still have all the same functionality, but we've just enhanced the user friendliness and the usability in terms of making the workflows a bit simpler, but all the same functionality with just a more easier way of creating our alerts. The first thing I want to take you through is you'll see on the left-hand side, we've got registration details. So each user that logs on, when they click on registration details, they would be able to see their product key and the number of active concurrent licenses in terms of creating different data sources. So if I've got a one user account, I can create one SQL ADO connection. If I've got a 5 user account, then I can create 5 connections. Next, we're going to look at the default screen. And there's 3 main components to our default screen. And as it suggests, this is just a default. So it's more so to make our life easier when we're creating alerts and not having to create a new data source and data connection all the time, not having to enter a default outgoing SMTP email mailbox all the time, as well as if we want to use SMS, not having to enter our SMS credentials each time we create an alert. Just bear in mind that these are defaults and can be overwritten per alert if we so wish to. The first part is our data source. So you will see that because I've got a one user registration license, I don't have an add new button. If I had not yet created my data source, I would have an add new button and it'll allow me to add a new data source. But I can edit my current data source as well by clicking on the edit button on the right-hand side. And you'll see my data source name, the server that I want to connect to, my Palladium database name, and my username and password. From the screen, I can also test my connection to make sure that I can successfully connect to that SQL Server database. The same with my SMTP settings. I can use any outgoing SMTP settings. I could use Office 365. I could use Google Mail. I can use anything for my outgoing settings. Once again, I've got my test option and I can send a test mail to myself. And you'll see test SMTP connection successful. Then I'm going to jump onto actually creating our alerts. You'll see that, as we mentioned earlier, you can create an unlimited amount of alerts, as we don't have any restrictions on that. So to add a new alert, we click on the plus sign at the top, which says add new. We've also got the function to export and import alerts. So I export an alert from the option on the right-hand side by saying export alert. And it will export to my downloads folder. I can then click on import alert, choose that export file. It's going to tell me that it already exists and ask if I want to override it. But this function is more so when you want to export an alert that you've created on one of your logins and import it onto another, or basically export and import and just change your data source connections. I do have the options to search for alerts by typing in various search options on my menus here, as well as having the option to apply a filter and to clear a filter. Okay, so when we're creating any alert, there's always ever at most 3 steps that you need to finalize. The first is to establish a connection to your SQL database, and to put in a SQL query that will give us the records or the data that we require. The second step would be to take those records that we get from SQL and either embed it within an email, so that we attach a grid to the body of the email. Alternatively, we want to send out an alert with an attachment, either in Excel or PDF. So, and the final step would be to say, how do I want to send out my alert? Do I want to send it out via an email or via an SMS? And bear in mind, with SMS, that's always going to be in plain text, and we limit it to 160 characters. So let's start by giving our alert a name. So the first one that I want to do with you guys is to look at sending out an alert to my customers that have overdue invoices. I'm giving my alert a name, and I'm going to call it Palladium Test Overdue Invoices. I can write any comment I want in my comment section. Maybe you want to explain a bit more in detail in terms of what this alert actually accomplishes, then you can within the comments. We've also got the options with 2 tick boxes in the middle here to say, do we want this alert enabled, which means it can then be automated, as well as do we want to enable report. If we enable report, then it will allow us to customize a report template to be sent via PDF or Excel. If we have it unticked, it would embed the table with our results in the body of the email. And this is one of the changes that we've now made on the new version that will be released in a few weeks' time. So we've just made it a bit simpler in terms of not having to click, unclick, make active, make inactive all the time. But we'll give you a bit more details as to when that's released, and then we can do a catch-up session on how the process flow has changed. So for now, I'm going to untick enable report because for this particular alert, I want the results embedded on the email. The next step would be to schedule our alert. So what this means is that we can specify whether we want this alert to run once by manually executing the alert, or do we want to put it on a schedule, similar to our window scheduler. So for example, we can say, I want this alert to run daily. I want it to run every weekday. Alternatively, I want it to run every second day, or every 1 day. The same with monthly. I can specify whether I want this to run on the first day of the month, the second day of the month, the last day of the month. I can then also specify, which month I want to run it. I might only want to run this quarterly, so I can say I want to run this January, April, and so forth. So for now, I'm just gonna set this to run once, and I'm gonna save this step. So once I've set my schedule, and I can at any stage, even after the alert's been created, change my schedule. I can then change it from run once to weekly, monthly, daily, hourly, run every minute. But normally when I do testing, I just set it to run once. So my first step is always ever going to be to create my data source. And this is one of the other changes that we've made on the process flow. So we're going to put it on a tab sheet. So you don't have to go and select data source, report, email. It will then go in a predefined workflow, just to make life a little bit easier for us. So I'm going to give my first step a name. I'm going to call this one get my data. And I'm going to give it a description. I then have the option to say, when my alert runs, what records do I want to pull out from SQL for my alert? Do I only want to pull out new records? Do I only want to pull out change records, deleted records, or do I want all records from my SQL query? So how that aspect works is, when an alert runs, we create a snapshot of the data, and we give each snapshot a snapshot ID. So if I run my alert at 8 a.m., it will pull out my SQL records, put it into a temporary table in SQL, and give it an alert ID. I then say, okay, I want to run that alert again at 10 a.m. It takes another snapshot, and it gives it a snapshot ID of number 2. So if I had selected new records, then it does a comparison between snapshot 2 and snapshot 1. And it says, okay, hold on, you've selected new records. So now I'm going to compare those 2 snapshots, and I'm only going to give you the records that exist in snapshot 2, and it doesn't exist in snapshot 1. And the same principle applies to change records and deleted records. So for this specific alert, I'm going to select all records. I'm going to enable this step, and I'm going to click on save. So I've got my step 1 saved. Now it's going to say, okay, you've selected that you want to connect to a data source. Which data source do you want to connect to? Because I set my default to be Palladium demo, it defaulted my data source configurator to Palladium demo. If I had a 3-user data source license, I could create 3 different connections to 3 different data sources. And when I click on my dropdown, it would give me, it would make all 3 data sources visible and give me the option to choose which data source I want to connect to. So for now, I'm going to select the 1, and I'm just going to do a test connection, and it says connection tested successfully, which means I can view my SQL Server instance externally. Now I've got to go and populate my SQL query that would give me the results that I want to output via my alert. So I've done one already, and I'm just going to copy that. So I've basically done my query in SQL using my management studio, so I know what records and what I need to test, and then I've copied that query into my Palladium Alerts application. In one of our future phases down the road, we will be implementing a query design wizard from within the Alerts application, but that's going to be in one of the next phases. So from here, I can verify my query. And if, for example, I had a mistake or something wasn't so nice on my SQL query, when I verify it, it'll tell me, okay, hold on, there's something wrong with your query. It then shows me my first 5 records, so then I can visibly see what records are coming through on my alerts application. It's then going to populate my fields from within my query, and it's going to tell me, okay, these are all the fields that you want from SQL Server. For your alert, do you need all of those fields? So I can say, no, I don't need these ones, or yes, I do need all of them. And then I can just tick which ones I want to pull through onto my, my alert. Then I've got an alias column. And with that alias column, I can change what I want to see on my I can change what I want my heading to be on my alert. For every alert and for our data connection, we've got to have a unique identifier. And that's more so to make our primary key from within our alerts database. So I'm going to say that my unique identifier is going to be my customer code, and it's going to be my document number. You can tick as many fields as you need to make a record unique within the alerts application. Okay, once I'm done and once I'm happy with establishing a connection to SQL, I'm going to click on the Save button, and I finally got my step 1 completed. Because I'm not doing a custom report to send via PDF and Excel, my next step would be to send out an email. So I'm going to click on the Add New Step icon at the top right. And I'm going to give this one a name. And I'm going to give this step a description. I'm then going to drop down on my step type, and then I'm going to say this one's going to be email, and I'm going to enable this step. I then click on my save button, and then it opens up my screen for me to customize my email outgoing configurator as well as my message. So if I click on the use default, it will then pull through my outgoing SMTP settings, which I created under my defaults icon on the left-hand side. If I don't want to use the defaults, then I can manually type in what outgoing server, what port, whether I'm using SSL authentication, and my username and password. So you will also see that I've got a tool, a CC, and a BCC option for populating my email addresses. I can manually type in an email address. Alternatively, I might say that I want to pull an email address out of my SQL query because I'm creating one alert for all overdue invoices in my company, but I want them to go out individually to my different customers. So I can click on this ellipse on the CC button, and I can say, I want to input my customer's email address. So each individual email will get sent to myself, and then the customer will get CC'd on his specific portion of the overdue invoices. I then put in a subject. And within my subject, I've also got the option to click on a ellipse button, and I can select my customer name. So my subject will read per customer, Palladium overdue invoices for customer, and put in my customer name in there. I can add any other field in there as well. I can add the customer code, total outstanding balance. I can just click on that ellipse and choose that respective field. I now, because I want to send this alert out individually to each customer, I need to tell Palladium Alerts that for each break or each new customer code, I need this email to be split. So I can then choose any of my fields which I want to use to split my email. So I'm going to split my emails based on customer code. And then I can click on my message button to type in a message, which would then filter through on the body of the email. I've got the option to enter in plain text, or I've got the option for HTML. So I'm going to choose HTML, and I'm going to say, good day. I'm going to insert the customer name. Please find below a list of overdue invoices. So you can basically type in any message in HTML as you like. You can make certain fields bold, indented. You can add images. You can add hyperlinks. So if you wanna put something to the effect of, for more information, please contact our accounts department. And we've inserted that as a hyperlink. Okay, and then once we've got our message, we can then save our email message. We can then find, So if we wanted an SMS to be sent out, we could tick on the send SMS option, and then it's going to open up the SMS screen for us. Then we can type out our message that we want populated on our SMS that go out. But for now, I'm going to focus on the email side, and I'm just going to save this step. I'm then going to save my alert since I'm completed, and then I'm going to go back in to look at my testing. So with regards to testing, we've got a few options on the top right. I can click on view history, and I normally use the view history to investigate when I get an error message, when I execute an alert and it doesn't go out. I can view a snapshot that I've already done. I can create a snapshot. By creating a snapshot, all it does is it executes the step 1 of my query to go into SQL and pull out my records. Alternatively, when I'm testing, I can manually execute this alert, and that's always before I put my alert on a schedule. So I'm going to manually execute. and my alert has executed successfully. I can then go into my mailbox, and then I can view the different alerts that go out. So here's for one customer. As you can see, Palladium overdue invoices for customer name. The to address was mine, and it's CC'd the customer. I could go and then check another, and happy days, everything's on my email, and that alert has successfully gone out. So that's the first alert example that I've taken you through, and that's for embedding the email, the alert result in the body of the email. The second example that we can look at now would be to send an alert via PDF or send an alert via Excel. So to do that, I'm going to start a brand new alert. So I'm going to click on my alerts icon on the top left-hand side. I'm going to click on the plus button to add a new alert. And I'm going to give this alert a name in my comments as I did in the previous one. So I'm going to call this one Palladium Sales by Rep. I'm going to give it a comment. And this time I'm going to leave the enable report option ticked. By leaving that ticked, it would then allow me to design a report using my report designer. Once again, my next step would be to put this on a schedule. I'm going to leave this to run once, and I'm going to save and add my step. I'm now going to give my step a name. I'm going to call this one step 1, getting data. And I'm going to choose my step type, which is going to be data source. I'm going to enable this, and I'm going to select my conditions. Once again, I'm going to go with all records, and I'm going to click on save. As before, I've got the option to switch between my different data sources if I have them. If I'm happy with the one that I'm using, I can test my connection. Green means go, and happy days, we can continue. I'm now going to select a query that I've already done in SQL, and I'm going to paste that into my my query section of the alert. As mentioned before, in one of the future phases, we will have a query design wizard, but that's still to come. So I'm going to verify my query, and it's going to show me my top 5 records. So all I'm showing in this alert is my sales by rep, what revenue that rep has done for the month, and which customer that revenue belongs to. Under my available fields, I can change my alias as I've shown you on the previous alerts, and I can set my unique key. For this one, my unique key is going to be my customer code and my sales rep. I'm just going to add revenue as well, just to make sure that I've got everything down to a unique record, and I'm going to save that step. So the change now from the previous alert that we've done is, since we are enabling the report designer, our second step is not going to be email anymore. It's now going to be step type report. So I'm going to give my step type a name. I'm just going to call it create report. I'm going to enable my step, and I'm going to click on save. On this screen, you'll see a few options towards the middle. So the first thing that I would do would be to download a blank report template. And the report designer that we use is called DevExpress for web. It is a free report designing tool. we can send you a link for downloading that report designer. But when we release the next version, we will have an option on the left-hand side, which will allow you to download that report designer tool from within the alerts application. That should be implemented hopefully within this week still. So by the time we've created various logins for you guys to access the multi-tenanted version, we should have that report designer download from within the application. So under my configurator, I've got the option to say download report template or download current report template. For when I'm creating this step for the first time, I'm going to download report template. When I've made changes and I've uploaded it, then I might have an instance where I want to make a further change, or I want to add new fields, or a customer wants some changes. Then I would download the current report template, so I don't need to start from the beginning with my report design. And then I can continue with making the changes that I need. So for now, I'm going to download report template, and it's going to download to my downloads folder. I then open my report designer, and I choose either create a new report, which will create a blank report. Alternatively, what I always do is restore the report from a file, and that will open up that download file. Okay, so it's opened up my blank report designer, and you'll see on the right-hand side, it's already created the data source to my SQL database, and it's got the fields that I require from my query for me to utilize in my report design. So when it comes to report designing, different people follow different methods of report designing. Some start by just adding the fields onto the detail, and they work on everything else afterwards. I always start by adding the customer's logo. So to do that, we click on this picture box on the left-hand side from a menu screen. And then I've got to choose which picture I want to use for my logo. And I do that from my properties section of the picture box. And I click on my data. I can then choose my image source, and I can browse what image I want to use. So I'm going to use my Palladium logo, and I'm going to give my report a heading. So what we can do as well in terms of what paper size and how we want to structure our margins, because we want to utilize maximum space as we can. If we go onto the properties for the report, we can either choose our report to be in landscape or portrait by selecting landscape, by ticking landscape or leaving it unticked. I can then remove any margins because I don't like margins. And then it gives me a full page for designing my report. I'm going to give my report a little heading by clicking on a label. And I'm going to call this one Palladium Sales by Sales Rep. Let's call it Sales Person. I can then change my font. I can change the size of my font, bold, underline, and then we can go about designing our report. We can add a line here to separate our header from our detail. And then our next step would be to use the various fields that we have within our data source within our report. So for this report, we can group this report by rep. To add a new group, we do that at the bottom left-hand side, add group. So I'm going to say group by sales rep, and I want to add a sort to say sort by customer code. You'll now see that I've added a new band to my report template. So above the details, I've got a group header, and that's group by sales rep. So I can add another label in here. And I can drag my salesperson into the header section of my report. So from here, I can then drag my customer code into the details, customer name into my details, and finally my revenue amount. I'm then going to give respective headings. So I'm not going to spend too much time making the report look pretty. I'm sure you guys are much better than that than me anyway. So I'm just going to call this one customer code. I'm going to copy this heading. I'm going to call this one customer name. And then finally my revenue. Okay, we can then add a few more lines just to separate our headings from our data. We can change our line styles. Line style here. So I can make these dotted so we don't have too many lines all over the place. So then once I'm done with my report, designer, I can save this. So what I've done is I've created a alerts template folder, and I've created, I've saved all my templates in one folder. So I know that for backup processes, I make sure that that folder is backed up to OneDrive, so I don't lose any of my templates. I'm going to give my report design a name, and I'm going to call this one Palladium Sales by Rep. And I'm going to save that. So now that I've designed my template, I go back into my Palladium alert. I click on the Upload Report button, and I choose my template that I've just designed. Once I've done that, I can choose the format that I want my alert to go out in, either PDF or Excel. I'm going to go PDF. Although Excel is quite good as well. So unlike a few of the other tools that I've worked on, whereby when we send out those reports in Excel, it messes up the column alignments. On this one, it doesn't. It keeps all the columns aligned. I'll do an export to Excel after PDF, and then you can have a look at that as well. I'm going to give my output a file name. I'm going to call it Palladium month date sales. From here, I can preview what my alert's going to look like, and it's basically going to look like this. So I can clean it up a bit in my template, giving that a bit more space, taking out that line. I'm going to save it under a new name. I like to version my templates. So if I make a mistake, I can always go back to the previous version. So I'm going to go upload my version 2. I'm going to preview my version 2. And that looks a lot better. So from here, I've now completed my report designing step of the alert. And I'm going to click on the save button. Now I've got 2 steps of my alert created. I've got my step 1 for getting my data, my step 2 for creating my report. And finally, my last step would be to send out via an email. So I'm going to call this one send email. I'm going to choose my step type to be email, and I'm going to enable the step. I'm going to save that. And once again, I'm going to use my use default option, so I don't have to retype my SMTP settings. I'm then going to send this alert to myself. And as I've shown you before, we can use CC and BCC. If we had our reps' email addresses, we could click on the ellipse and select their email addresses so they would also get copied on the email. I'm going to give my alert a subject. And then for this particular alert, I'm not going to split it. I'm going to have one alert going out as one attachment. I'm going to put in my HTML message. And I'm going to save my message. Once that's done, I'm going to click on the save button. And happy days, my alert has been created. So I can now run a test on that alert by editing the alert. I still don't have this on the schedule. I can create a snapshot. I now know that I am getting access to my data. I can view history. The history will say, okay, at that date and time, you only executed step 1, and that's been completed successfully with no errors. And finally, I can manually execute my alert to see what the alert's going to look like. Do not know what that is. Okay, I think it doesn't like one of the email steps. So I'm going to execute that. By going back into my alert. I'm not sure why it didn't save this. Just going to give this a name again. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to save that. Pretty sure I clicked on that save button, but could have missed it. Just going to confirm that it's still there. Okay, perfect. Okay, alert executes successfully. And then I go to my outbox, and here's my alert that's come through. As you can see, those emails send through pretty quickly. So some clients have alerts that run every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes. They want to get notified straight away when credit notes are done over a specific amount. They want to use alerts for auditing to make sure that there's no theft happening in the business. So they'd want to get notified straight away. So if I go into my alert, you'll see that my attachment has come through in PDF. And this is what my alert looks like. So group by salesperson, customers, sales amount. So we can make this report look a lot neater. We can have each rep on a new page, similar to any other report designing tool. You can customize your numeric and data types so they look a lot neater, but I just went with the quickest option. I want to show you what it looks like when we send in Excel. So I can just go back into my alert. I can change my format to Excel. I can save this, save my alert again. I just want to make sure it's Excel, and I'm going to manually execute my alert. Okay, great stuff. Then we go back into our mailbox and we look at what our alerts will look like in an Excel format. So it does come through in XLS, and that's what our alert looks like. So as you can see, it keeps the alignment nicely. On this one, it's showing my amount as a text field. All we've got to do on our template is change this data type on the field itself under properties to say text expression, and we say 2 decimal. So there's a lot of reading material on the DevExpress web report writer. You can Google, we can send you guys a few links, or you can always inquire if you need a little bit more training on the report designer side. But once you start and get into it, it's quite simple. Okay, perfect. So that concludes our training session on how we create alerts, different type alerts that we have, what's to be released in our next phases, and yeah, thanks for taking the time to join us.